Welcome back to the 7th and final part of my mini-series called The Road to Roadworthiness. I specifically made this little mini-series as kind of just like the final parts of getting this car ready to get back on the road, and it's been a huge journey so far. It's been more in depth than I thought it was gonna be. That's why there's 7 parts to this. But we're getting there. We're getting really close. So this is going to be wrapping up the last little bit of stuff that I had to do. And it kind of looks like there's a lot to do, and well, that's because there is. We'll just take a quick look at the list. This is a short version of what I actually have to do. But these are all things that have to be done in order for it to be able to start and hopefully move. I'm gonna get started on some of this today. We were actually supposed to get started with the transmission today, and then I guess Ivan's peeing from his butt or something, so he's not able to come today. I have a few smaller things that I'd like to do that I've either forgotten about or I've been pushing off. Like, I want to put the review mirror back up. I might install the passenger seat today too. I did buy a new bench vise too, so I might try to get the U-joint on the other side of the drive shaft also. Everything is just so much easier when you have an actual bench vise. I tried doing this. I'm not even sure if I put it in the video or not, but I tried doing this, which is putting the U-joint into the drive shaft. I tried doing this without the vise because I broke mine, and I basically I ended up messing up the needle bearings that are on the caps of these. You gotta be really careful with that, make sure they're not like laying down when you put them on. And then I tried to like tap them in with a socket, and it just didn't work very well for me. It's just so much easier when you actually have the correct tools. I actually forgot that the drive shaft where it goes to the differential uses the little like U-bolt things to go around the actual U-joint. So it's the first time I've actually ever done this on a Javelin, or, well, honestly, any car. I've said it numerous times throughout this whole thing, but I'm learning a lot of stuff as I go. And this is just one more thing that I'm learning. This is no exception. So basically, I just need to get under there, put the bolts on there, and then I should be good. So it should be 1/2-inch drive, pretty sure, for those bolts, or the nuts on the bolts. So I'm just gonna get under there and put it together. Get this guy over here. Oh, I need a socket wrench. I have 2 3/8 drives. Can't find either one. Okay, I think it's in the car. There's my hoodie. Oh, God. Got some extra brake line / fuel line here. Oh boy, now they're getting crazy with the music next door. Francisco's a pretty cool dude, but he likes to torture me, so I don't know. Don't know about that guy. There we go. I'm gonna start cheering after every song they play. See what happens. I'll just start singing for you guys. Have yourself a merry little Christmas. I don't know if Christmas is already done or not, but that's what you get, okay? Okay, that ain't going anywhere. Okay, now fast forward to where it goes somewhere. Okay, it's on there. Drive shaft is on the differential, so you know what that means. Marker, I get to cross off something. Finished the fuel lines. I definitely have never ran fuel lines. I've helped run some brake lines a couple times, some cooling lines. Never fuel lines somehow, but I guess I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna try to figure this out by myself. But I think that essentially all that has to be done is there needs to be a rubber line going from the front where it's ending right now to the actual fuel pump, and then the same on the other side. So the same at the back where it goes into the fuel tank, it needs a rubber line in there too. So I'm gonna try to call Ivan. Hopefully he's not too busy peeing out of his butt.
That's right, buddy. You show that turd who's boss.
And he can maybe explain it to me in case I miss something or if I need to know something important. I don't know if you have to use like a flare tool to flare the end of it, or if you just stick a hose clamp on there and you're good. So I'm just gonna ask him. I could probably ask Mr. Google also, but we'll try Ivan first since this was supposed to be his job. Okay, so I got one part figured out. I actually skipped the fuel lines for now because I had to keep with tradition, you know, just ignoring that. Actually, what I did though, I didn't get around to it last time, was the shifter cable going from the shifter to the transmission. Obviously, transmission's still not here, but I was able to get it routed and everything. And I'm talking in my office because the music next door is really loud, and they're nice guys, so I don't want to bother them, but you know, because I'm just recording a video. But yeah. So what I ended up doing was I routed it from underneath here. It's underneath the front of the console right here. Can't even see it. Then it goes underneath here. Still can't see it. All you can really see is about 3 inches of it where it goes into the floorboard right here. I put a little hole going into the transmission tunnel right there. I put a rubber grommet so it won't rub or anything. And then it just goes down and it's gonna loop back towards the transmission. And as far as I can tell, we should be pretty good keeping it away from the header. My main concern is actually having enough room around the transmission, but I think we're gonna be okay. Let me try to turn that, there we go. Yeah, it looks like the grommet popped out just a little bit actually. But it's gonna come out right here, and it's just gonna loop back, and then it's gonna come back here towards the transmission where it'll actually do the shiftages. I might have to do something like as far as kind of routing this in a way that it's got a nice bend in it, nice big radius and all that. You don't want it to be too tight because these will bind up, and you don't want them too close to the headers because they'll burn up. And they're actually kind of annoying in that way, but I think if we take the proper precautions, everything should be okay. So I'm actually going to go to the parts store here in a minute, and I'm going to grab a heat shield that you can slide onto this, and then you use like a shrink thingy to basically keep it in place. So I'm going to go do that really quick. I still haven't gotten around to getting that heat shielding stuff for the cable and whatnot like I was talking about. But I did remember that I need to put the passenger seat in the car, and I pretty much have that all ready to go. I just have to poke some holes through there. I'm gonna like cut the excess carpet so the bolts actually go through, and then tighten it up, and then viola, it's done. I have everything where I need it in the floorboard. I poked some holes through there. I should be able to get everything in without issue. So just another half an hour and I'll probably have it in. That's usually how it goes. But let's try it. Let's see what happens. Let's try to be positive today. Positive thinking. The power of positive thinking. Oh, jeez. Let's scratch my seat. God, carbon. Okay. Let's see. Let's get these close here. If you haven't watched the other videos that I did about these seats, you should check that out, because I found these on eBay. These are super cheap aftermarket seats, and I made an adapter plate so you can use these with the factory sliders, which really in the long run makes things a lot easier, because these bolt right into the original holes in the floorboard. So you don't have to do any permanent changes to the floorboard for the seating if you do it this way. It's really nice. I actually have the blueprint also, so if you have a 71 through 74 Javelin and you want to use these seats specifically, just let me know and I'll give you the blueprint for it, and you can bring it somewhere where they cut metal and they'll cut it for you. Going down. All right, I finally have 2 seats in my car. So This is pretty cool. This is a milestone. Dang. You have a pretty good amount of leg room with this all the way back. I like that. It's a cool view sitting over here, just checking out everything. Eventually I'll have a car seat here and I can enjoy the car with my little girl. That's gonna be really cool. I'm really looking forward to that actually. Fast forward about 3 or 4 days and I'm back here again. There's some smaller things that I forgot, like the header bolts. I was gonna take at least 1 or 2 of these out and put them into tighter, harder to reach spots, or the bolts that are really hard to deal with. So I'm gonna do that first thing before I forget, because for some reason I already crossed it off for the header bolt tightening. So I'm gonna do that. And then I also recently got this, which is the starter solenoid to starter cable. So this runs obviously from the starter solenoid down to the actual starter. So I have that. I kind of guessed, I'm gonna have to hang on to the receipt because I don't really know how far it is exactly. They had a 40-inch cable, which is this, and then they had 49, and I just thought 49 might be overkill. Then I also grabbed some all-purpose sealant. This is gonna be for the grommet where the shifter cable goes down through the transmission tunnel. I just want to put a little bit of this around the grommet, make sure it doesn't go anywhere because it seems like it might do that. Then finally, for the same job, I got some of this heat sheath. This is literally what it sounds like. You cut this to size and then you wrap it around the hoses or cables or whatever you have. And then there's like little pieces of like shrink stuff, I believe, that you kind of like slide over the end and then you just heat it up and then it's tight. So I don't know how much is actually in there. There's a couple things I could use this on. I was actually looking at the neutral safety switch and I don't know how hot that's actually gonna get, but it might be something that would be worth using this on. I can't remember if I showed that or not, but I did actually make this look a little bit nicer. The neutral safety switch, let me get the tape off of it. But yeah, I cleaned up the little bracket where it actually goes onto the firewall, and then I could probably clean up the actual connectors a little bit more, but I put new, I don't know what you call this, like the little flex conduit stuff. I put that around the wires. I took the old like fabric loom stuff off and put this on there. Put some electrical tape on it. You know, it looks pretty decent now, so I feel good about that. If only the rest of my shop looked nice and neat like that. Anyhow, I'm gonna get those things done and gonna see how much time I have, but I think that I'd be happy with just getting those things done. I still have to do the fuel lines. I'm just putting it off like as long as I possibly can. Because I've never really done it before, and I just don't feel it's so easy compared to a lot of the other things that I've done, I think, but I just don't have very much confidence about it, so I'm kind of just waiting, but I'll get around to it eventually. Really quick here, I actually took this out of the package, and it doesn't have the little thing that slides over and like shrinks down on the end. So if you use a shorter section than whatever you're trying to put it on, this could move a little bit. So I'm going to be a little precise-ish with the cutting just to make sure that this isn't going to move around too much. It's not like a massive opening to slide things in here, but it's more than enough for what I need it for. But the reason why I got this is because when I was looking into B&M shifters, or like the installation process with the shift cable and all that, I was looking into the routing of the actual cable, and a lot of people were saying that they got too close to the headers and whatnot, and it would basically burn through the cable, making it so the cable couldn't do anything. So you're unable to shift your transmission at all because that cable gets hot and it like frays the cables, like, or lets them fly loose because there's no housing around them anymore. I don't know. I'm just trying to avoid these kinds of problems ahead of time. So anytime I see something like that, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go buy, you know, this $10, $15 piece right here, and I'm just gonna wrap the cable, and hopefully I won't have any problems like that. This is all I'm talking about right here. This is the cable with the heat shield on it, and it's just coming straight out of the transmission tunnel area near the front. And this will basically help it just from getting too hot. The only part I'm really worried about is over here near the front where you're kind of getting close to the back of the headers, because what I'm going to end up having to do is I'm going to have to like go forward towards the heads that you can see there, a little bit of aluminum up in there. It's going to have to go towards the headers and then kind of loop down and then back this way down the trans tunnel towards the transmission. It has to go from the front to reach the shift linkage and all that stuff. So that's why I'm using it. When I was trying to get the header bolts on these headers originally, I was having a lot of problem with the primary tubes being in the way basically of the header bolts, and I had problems with spark plugs and just a lot of things. And I actually beat these headers up before I even put them on. So I was able to make sure that the bolts could go into the hole without, you know, having too much trouble. But when they're on the car, that's a different story, because the main problem I'm having here is that I'm trying to get the rear bolt in, the very back one on the passenger side here, and you can't really do very much. I couldn't get a socket over the whole thing, the whole bolt, so I couldn't actually get like an extension and get any leverage that way, and I couldn't get a wrench. I mean, I was able to get like the open side of a wrench on there just a little bit, but it's really hard to get the leverage that you need when it's right up against the firewall. So I was having a lot of problems with it. Then I looked into getting some bolts with an even smaller hex head, and I think that these are 5/16 hex head. They're 3/8 threads, just like what's already on there, but it's really stupid. It's like I basically bought this entire set right here from ARP. This was like $25 or something online. There's a very good chance I'm going to use one of these. It's just stupid. Like, maybe I'll go back and put them on just because, or I'll just have them as backups. I don't really know. I'm not happy about it. Basically spent like $40, $50 on header bolts just for one complete set. But I'm going to quit yapping. I'm just going to take one of these out here and I'm just going to hopefully slap it right in there and have no problems at all. Guys, you're not gonna believe it, but I actually put that bolt on without any problems. I just got my 1/4-inch drive with a little extension on there, 5/16 short socket like that. Went right in, no problems whatsoever. So if you are building an AMC V8 and you're having issues with your long tube headers, which all 6 of you guys, you relate to me, but this is the part number right here. It says 100-1110. These are what you need. These will work for you. I'm just really happy to know that something works. I was starting to get worried. I feel like I never got you up to speed on what was happening with the fuel lines. So I originally had a stainless steel fuel line. That's this one laying over here across everything. And we never were really able to figure out how that was supposed to route. There's no diagrams. I couldn't find any pictures. There's really nothing. So what we ended up doing was I got some, I can't remember if it was brake line or fuel line, whatever, but it's just cheap metal line. And we started kind of like forming it, or I should say Ivan started forming it and running it along the bottom of the car. And at the time I didn't have enough clamps to really fasten it to the bottom of the car, so he did like 3 or 4 and kind of like roughly got it where it needs to be, and then that was it. Ever since, it's basically just been sitting. The main part though is the back of the car. I need to kind of make sure that it makes sense. Yeah, it's coming up on this side. Right now it's just coming over the axle and then dangling right here, but it needs to come over like alongside the subframe, and then there's like a little nipple there. You can see the nipple poking out. Anyways, that's where the line needs to go, roughly. I need to do rubber, though, going from that nipple to the actual hard line. So once I have everything roughed up to where I need it to be, then I can start worrying about the rubber lines, but not until then. Okay, so the last place it's actually fastened appears to be about midway. Okay, so it's that one right there. That guy. So that's going there, then he has it so it goes over the drive shaft. And then it kind of just follows along here, going back, and then he bent it going over. And I think I'm just gonna take this tire off. It's gonna be a lot easier without this in the way. So I noticed that underneath there's a few clips already in there. They're kind of on a small side, but they're holding the brake lines already. So I think what I'm gonna do is find a slightly bigger one, and I'm gonna put the fuel line in with it. But first, safe, glass. All right, I got everything tightened to right here. This is a little suspension stop right there. I think I'm gonna cut it just a little behind it, and then I'm gonna kind of let it dangle. You can't really see from right here, but it's fastened like right over here, like behind this. So it's not like flopping around or anything. But I need to get this to a point where I can actually cut this and possibly flare it. So it's been a really long time since I've even done that. So I'm gonna have to try my luck here on that, but that's the next thing I have to do, and then it's pretty much ready to have the little rubber piece installed, and then it's good on this side. And then the other thing, just in case you're wondering, I just bought this little package of, well, what do they call it? Rubber cushion pipe clamps. These, I think I got these on Amazon. It's just an assortment of different sizes and whatnot. And then I went to Ace Hardware and got number 10 sheet metal screws. I already had those from something else. So that's really all you got to use. And I use these slightly larger ones to double up the brake line and fuel line along the transmission tunnel there. So worked out pretty nicely. So this is the flaring tool, and I just need to add like a simple flare just to make it so the rubber hose doesn't like come off the line very easily. That's literally the main purpose of what I'm doing here. So I'm gonna use that, and then this little tool right here is what I use to actually cut the line. So I'm gonna go ahead and take care of this. As you can see here, I was able to add another bracket. I didn't realize there's a hole right there. So went ahead and did that, dropped it over here, pulled it out just a little bit, added my hose, added some clamps. The other thing I was looking at was the dual inlet here for the carburetor. I think this is just something I kind of like threw together for the most part just to get it to work on the engine stand where the engine was built. So I could use this. All I really have to do is just flip it around and have the inlet side, or yeah, the actual like inlet for the whole thing, just put it over here. But I actually bought an aftermarket, well, I guess pretty much every inlet you get's gonna be aftermarket, but I got a nice like braided steel one, and hopefully it'll clear this coil here. I think I won't have any problems with it. I have a fitting that actually goes like back towards the carburetor just a little bit. It's like a 110-degree fitting or something. And I got some other stuff here. I guess I'll just show you really quick. So I went to my local performance shop, and they were able to just cut me all of this. It's 3.5 feet of braided fuel line. I don't really know if I need that much, but that's what I got. And then I got this black braided fuel line for the dual inlet. So, and this is the fitting I was talking about that kind of like goes backwards. And then this side will, there's another fitting in the bag, and this will just go to the fuel pump right here. I'm gonna just kind of look at this. Sometimes you just gotta look at it. So yeah, this basically will fit on like that. Should fit just fine. I don't, the coil is sort of in the way. I guess we'll see how much it's in the way exactly here in a minute. Who the hell's Daniel Landscaping? I'm right here. As you can tell, I am not in the shop anymore. I did finish up the fuel line going to the carburetor. I originally bought more fuel line than I thought I was going to need in order to get it from the inlet to the actual fuel pump. It turns out I used pretty much all of it, so you pretty much need 3.5 feet, at least if you have a similar setup to what I have. The coil is just right in the way, so if you had like a HEI or something with like the coil built in or something, then you could probably get away with just having it go off the front, which would honestly be better and less noticeable. But the way that I have it, the other side technically would have probably worked also, but there's all the linkage for the transmission and the throttle and all that stuff, so I just figured it would be better to do it on the passenger side still, but pointing backwards. So right now it's looping behind, and then it goes along the intake manifold and then straight down to the fuel pump. The main thing today though is I'm hitting a somewhat major milestone today in that I'm getting the transmission, which has been rebuilt. So I've finally finished the transmission and now I can finally bring it home. So there's a few things I'm still gonna have to do before we can even get it in. I mean, technically you can do this with the transmission in, but I need to attach the linkage for the shift cable, because you know it doesn't use all that stuff from the factory. And I have the aftermarket shifter also, so those are reasons why I need to put, there's like a B&M shift kit, or not a shift kit, it's like a linkage kit for their cable where you actually attach it to the transmission. So I'm gonna have to install that in my free time. I even was able to check the converter, so we know the converter fits, so pretty much all that is good. I'm just gonna get as much ready as I possibly can so we can just throw it in there. I do still need to figure out a couple little things with the fuel line going to the fuel pump from the gas tank side. One of the issues was the fuel line it wasn't really kinked, but it was bent kind of in a weird way, so I was trying to figure out a way that I could just cut out that small section of it and maybe put the fuel filter there. But the problem is the fuel filter is like right next to the headers, or it would be right next to the headers, and I would need to put like a heat shield around it and like all this kind of like BS that I don't really want to deal with. So I actually figured out a better solution, which is I'm gonna go back behind the firewall, and I may have already stated some of this. I'm gonna go back behind the firewall and I'm gonna kind of just find a good place where I can kind of get everything loose again, and I'm gonna cut it, and I'm gonna put the rubber piece on, fuel filter, rubber piece, connect it back to metal, and I'm just gonna put like a whole new metal piece going to the fuel pump, and then put everything else in there, and then we should be good. So that's my next little project for that. But until then, we're on our way. I'm actually gonna have Randy come with me and help me with the actual transmission to get it in and out and all that. But yeah, gonna do that, and I'm really excited to actually get this thing back. I was going to, but so what? Yeah, that wide angle though. My plan was fast and quick. It has a top speed of 160, I think. Tail side first, bro.
Still smells like fucking brake clean in my car.
Alright, I have no idea where this thing goes, but
I don't know either.
okay, so the transmission is back. This is it. It looks pretty much the same as before. It's not very fancy looking. The neutral safety switch, this is the original one actually. I'm not totally sure if I'm gonna get a new one or not right off the bat. I guess I can just try this one and see if it works. I'm gonna unscrew it here and see what it looks like. I mean, I don't know, probably works. But one thing I do need to do though is I need to get the B&M linkage plate adapter crap connected on here. And then there's a couple other small things like, oh God, which reminds me, there's like a metal piece, like a bracket somewhere. Hope it didn't get lost when we moved everything, but it's supposed to go on the front here over this little hole here. I think that's like the vent or something. So I need to make sure that that gets found and put back. I'm gonna try to finally finish up some of the fuel line stuff here on the bottom, or at least attempt to. There's the fuel line, there's like a small kink kind of where we tried to bend it previously. I'm just gonna remove all that, and then I'm gonna end up putting the fuel filter like somewhere behind the firewall area, kind of like where the fuel line runs currently. I just fought with the fuel lines for quite a while. Most of it was just trying to get the flare tool to work right. I just didn't have it tight enough, so it kept slipping off. Whew, my eyes are watering. I had about 15 pounds of crap from the bottom side of the car fall onto my eyes. So yeah, that was fun. I did get a new piece shaped altogether though. You can see this is the old piece. Ivan had some interesting bends going on here. Most of it was good though. First bend's okay. There's a couple little things. He's getting a little creative here. And then kind of had it loose in here, but then this, let me see if I can get this steady. This right here, it was bent really tight. And we were talking about this. This was actually way further back than I thought, so I probably could have saved myself a little bit of trouble technically by just cutting out this section and just doing that over again. But I took the whole thing out, and there's like a section here where it starts to go like over the transmission is pretty much where this is at, like the tail shaft of it. But I left this bend in here, and then I kind of cut out this metal section here, and that's where I put my fuel filter. So I put one of them there anyways. Excuse all the garbage. Everything on this fuel system is like brand new. It's literally all of it's brand new. So I'm not worried about it picking up a bunch of dirt and getting to the engine really, at least right away. I do at least have that one filter on there though. I rather would use the metal one, but what I have already on hand is one of these guys right here. So that's what it looks like right now. It's up there, good enough. It's above the subframe right here, so it's not gonna hit the ground or anything crazy like that. It's getting pretty late here. I think the wife is probably gonna murder me, you know, for being out late, but it's not that late. I am on to finishing the fuel line. So what I'm talking about here is a little NPT fitting here. Goes right into the fuel pump. You can kind of see it down in there. That's it right there underneath the power steering here, kind of tucked in there with a port that you can see lit up. So that's gonna be what I'm threading this into. I am gonna use some, what is it called? The Teflon for the threads. I'm gonna put that on, and I have some rubber hose. I already flared the end of the line that's going towards the back of the car, and then it'll finally be done. Let's get under here really quick. I got this is the line for the fuel going back along the subframe rail, I guess you could call it. Got the rubber hose in here going to the fuel pump. Should be all good. I put some Teflon tape here on the threads for the NPT fitting. This is the AN fitting down here going up to the carburetor. That's pretty much it, I think. There's actually a couple brackets I'm probably gonna still put in here. This does have some play in it still, so I should probably at least do one, just make sure this doesn't flop around or get into something it shouldn't get into. Finally. God. Now I'm gonna clean up some bolts, some hardware. I have a few bolts for the bell housing. I'm just gonna reuse the old ones. I know most people will be like, oh, just get some new ones, but it's not that hard to do. Well, it's kind of a pain in the ass because these bolts are, They're like 3/4, it's like 2 3/4 inch for one, 2 1/4 inch for another. And I could find new ones, but honestly, I'm not that worried about it. I think it's gonna be just fine. So I'm gonna clean up the ones I have with my handy dandy grinder bench thingy. Past Dan was nice enough to make a bag named Trans Bolts. So this should be everything that I need. There are some flex plate bolts in here. I also have some flex plate bolts here. I don't know where these came from. They might have actually came from the 360 that I used to have. I have some other random pieces for the transmission here also. So I'm gonna probably just clean up these because this is the whole set of 6 right here. And then the actual bell housing bolts, I'll clean up and use those. There's some extra bolts here too. Not entirely sure what those are for, so we'll just hang on to those. Hardware is all cleaned up, so that should be ready to go. I think I'm actually gonna get started on the flex plate bolts really quick. All I really have to do is get the flex plate on there. I gotta get some Loctite on the bolts and then figure out what the torque specs are. And that's pretty much it for the flex plate. I put the plate on there that I thought that I was missing, but I'm actually not. I believe it's just a cover for the vent. Not entirely sure what the purpose is of it, but I just figured I'd go ahead and slap it back on there because that's how it came. So that's on there. I am currently in the process of putting about 1 quart of trans fluid in the converter. Appears that I have done that now. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to get this to engage on the output shaft here, or input shaft, I guess you call it. But yeah, gonna get that on there. Hopefully I can hear all the clicks and I can get it on there and not worry about it. So here goes something. I don't know if you can tell by the enthusiasm in my voice, but I've done this a few times now. I've done it once on a Javelin, once on a Challenger. I feel like I've had to do it before. Well, on the last Javelin I had, we had to take it out about 6 times. We took the transmission completely off the engine, put it back in and out, in and out, in and out. So we should be pretty much professionals by now, but yeah, I'm just hoping I can get this on here and it's not a hair pulling experience, but let's just do it. You just gotta be sure to be somewhat gentle with this because there is the pump seal. You want to make sure you're not like jamming stuff on there. There we go. That's some of it at least. And then, according to pretty much most people, you just sit here and you kind of turn it. Oh man, I already split my glove. Jeez, these are cheap. Anyways, you just sit here for an eternity, hoping that something happens. They don't really say how fast you should go or how slow. I've heard sometimes you kind of like go back and forth a little bit. So far nothing's happening. So it's about par for the course. Sit here doing this for about, I don't know, forever until suddenly something happens. Alright, I think I'm gonna do the old trick and stand it up. Well, as always, it's somewhat of a mystery whether you actually get it all the clicks or not, but my major hint that it is all the way engaged is that it's set back into here. And I'll have to check the actual measurements, but I believe you can kind of get like an idea on whether it's in all the way. And honestly, you can kind of feel the bolts underneath where the front pump bolts into the case of the transmission. And I think if it goes any more, we're gonna have some clearance issues. So I'm kind of hoping that it doesn't engage again, or if it does, it's very minor. But I'm gonna spin it some more just in case and kind of see what happens. So it is definitely in far enough, I believe. I didn't actually measure it just yet, but I think that it's supposed to be about 3/4 of an inch from the outside of the bell housing to the actual mounting pad, and that's roughly 3/4 of an inch, I'd say. I just went ahead and started on a linkage over here also. I took the old shifter linkage off, nice and crusty, it's just sitting there now. Cleaned up the throttle linkage here a little bit, put on the new B&M linkage right here. I believe that we're good to go on all that stuff. This has the spring action in it, so that should be good. This is the old neutral safety switch. I may just buy a replacement one just because these are not known to last forever. They do fail from time to time. I've experienced that myself. But this is pretty much as assembled as I can get it right now. Once everything's in there, I can get the cable through, attach it to the bracket here. There's like a little swivel pin with a cotter pin that goes through it that attaches into here. And then I can attach the kickdown linkage here, I believe, when that's all done. I'm not exactly sure how the kickdown attaches here. That's something I just thought about because the kickdown, I don't think it has that swivel pin, so I'm gonna have to look into that. I hope I don't need to get something still. I did post a picture of the flex plate on the Facebook group, and it seems like it's kind of 50-50 on whether I have the flex plate installed the correct side or not. The actual flex plate, it says on the side that's facing me that it's the engine side, so that had me kind of wondering from the beginning. But if I did that, the concave side would be facing the block of the engine, and it seems like it wasn't, like it was dragging and stuff, like it wasn't supposed to go that way. But now I'm actually starting to wonder if that was the correct way or not, because there is a counterweight facing the transmission, and the counterweight is actually thicker than the pads on the torque converter, which would mean that the counterweight would hit the converter before the mounting pads do. So I know that sometimes you have to shim the mounting pads, so I'm thinking maybe that's what's going on, but I'm not entirely sure just yet. And it kind of sucks because I put Loctite on those threads and everything, so it's really not gonna want to come off if I do end up having to take it off. So I really hope that I have it on correctly. Randy and I are here at the shop. We are going to be trying to do some big stuff today. We have the transmission sitting over on the other side of the shop, and we're gonna at least try to get it bolted to the actual engine. If we can do more, then sweet, but I'm not banking on it because I've done this before and it sucks. Oh god, just slipped. So this is pretty much where I left it. There's like a dust shield. I don't even know if I'm gonna put that on. It's not actually necessary. I already did the B&M stuff here. I'm kind of like catching myself up because it's been pretty punctuated when I'm actually here able to do shit. So I do have the dipstick tube, but that goes on afterwards. I actually bought a O-ring for this here in the bottom where it goes into the body over here. So you just kind of pop that in there. So I'm gonna try that and see if it actually fits. But other than that, I think we're ready to go. The flex plate is on there and it's got Loctite on it and all that stuff. So we're gonna have to kind of like get under here and move some things around and start trying to put it together. I actually need to take the drive shaft off also to get that out of the way because I stupidly put it in there, kind of. So Randy and I were kind of looking at things on the transmission, trying to make sure that we had like the correct bolts and the correct positions and that type of thing. And then we started looking at the torque bolt, or the, what is it? Yeah, the torque converter bolts, and these are 7/16 thread, and the holes in a flex plate are for 3/8 bolts. So now I'm actually going to use a step drill bit, and I'm going to drill bigger holes in the flex plate and then hopefully we'll be good to go on that. I was a little worried that we're gonna have to like send a converter back and like put all new mounting pads on it and all that stuff, but I think we can avoid that. We're gonna find out here in just a second. All right, successfully opened up the holes on a flex plate a little bit. Excuse you! Jesus Christ. So I got those fixed on the flex plate. They're opened up. Now we're just gonna get the transmission on the jack and have fun with that. I'm sure it's gonna be a good time. Here we go! Lift the back. Oh. Yeah. Like that. Stopper is not touching a transmission at the moment. Hold on, let me try to... Yeah, there's like a little rubber cushion, basically. Let's see. I was trying to use that as like an indication to tell me how far away we are. Whew, okay, we kind of wiggled this thing around and got everything where we needed it, and we got all the bolts in there, sort of snug. Now I'm gonna get the big 1/2-inch drive with the torque wrench and everything. I'm gonna get these torqued up, and we'll get the trans mount here on the back and put the drive shaft in and whatever else we can get done today. So remember how all that stuff was just up there a second ago and I was talking about, you know, tightening up everything and making it all good? Well, that didn't really work out, did it? I got everything back together, and I didn't think to check the torque converter to make sure it was nice and loose still before tightening it up against the engine. And just so you know right off the bat, I think that everything's okay. Like, I don't think the front pump got messed up or the gear or anything got messed up. So I think that we're okay. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure. I tried to look in there and I didn't see anything visibly messed up. Doesn't mean that it's not, but yeah, the converter was pressed up against the flex plate really hard to the point where I couldn't turn it or anything. The mounting pads were lined up with the holes on the flex plate, so I know it wasn't the pads hitting the counterweights, but what I was hoping for was there would be enough gap that I could shim it so it wouldn't hit the counterweight. But I think the counterweight is actually pushing up against it anyways. So I'm actually just back here at the shop. That was like a couple days ago already. So that whole thing's gone. Randy's gone and everything. But I'm just basically here to get some measurements on the converter and the flex plate and a couple other things to try to figure out if there's any way to resolve this. I might kind of like spin the converter around a little bit on the input shaft and everything. So I had a lot of people on the groups on Facebook and whatnot say, it doesn't look like it's seated completely. It doesn't look like it's seated completely, so on and so forth. So as you can see here, there's a circle all the way around here where the paint got rubbed off. I'll get you in real close here. And there's even a spot, like a secondary spot right here. So I'm not sure what that is exactly. Could be one of the front pumps or something, but I think this is actually just part of the case, really close up to the front pump area, and it's just scraping this. I don't remember if I recorded it or not, but when this is on and it was spinning and it's like all the way up against the transmission, you could hear like a kind of like scraping sound. I think that's what this is. I don't know if this is because this is somehow the wrong converter body and this is too close to the actual transmission right here to even let it seat all the way, or if it already is seated all the way. It's hard to tell. Most people, I think even Hughes says it's supposed to be 3 clicks that you hear, 3 distinct clicks. And I didn't really get 3 distinct clicks. I'm getting more like 2. But I'm going to try it again. Maybe I'll get that on camera too. But I'm going to get my measurements really quick before anything, and maybe we'll try that out. While we're down here, I figured I would kind of show what I'm looking at here. I believe this red that you're seeing in these couple spots is where it's actually making contact. So I just got my micrometer out and I took a bunch of measurements of everything, and I am actually starting to believe that it isn't fully seated in a transmission, but it's because I think that the shape of the converter or something is keeping it from actually going down onto the input shaft as far as it's supposed to go. So I think that it's literally just the shape of the converter itself that's not allowing it to go further down. So I'm not entirely sure why that would be a thing, since supposedly all torque flights are the same, but I don't know. I'm gonna have to get a hold of Hughes. I did send them an email a couple days ago, but we're right at the beginning of the year, so it's probably gonna take a little bit for them to get back to me, but that's the next thing I'm waiting on, I guess. Well, I am on my way to the shop again. This whole converter thing has just been kind of a nightmare, honestly. I've been figuring out a couple things with the converter. I'll show you here in a minute when I actually get to the shop, but there's a couple things that I'm learning that might actually be some pretty valuable information for a lot of people in the AMC community, because if I knew any of this ahead of time, this would have been very helpful. Hughes has been very helpful, so I'm very glad for that. They took my converter back under warranty and made some changes to it. Everything, like from the snout to the mounting pads, that measurement is exactly the same. It's 5.5 inches, but they actually moved the body of the converter like down an eighth of an inch. They actually made it like more shallow than it was before. So now it's pulled away just a little bit from the front pump area. So hopefully I'll actually be getting a little bit more clearance to pull away from it, and it'll actually be able to settle in to the front pump another eighth of an inch and also give me a little bit more clearance. So I'm going to be checking some measurements and stuff on that. I'll show you what I'm talking about with kind of what I've been figuring out with the SFI flex plate and the converter. So let's get over there really quick and I'll catch you up a little bit. I'm back here at the shop and I got the torque converter with me, and I'm just going to show you a couple things with these converters and try to explain stuff in terms of the converters working with flex plates for AMC V8s, because I think this is some important information, and I'm trying to kind of like make it known, because honestly there's just not a lot of information for AMC specific stuff out there. Especially when it comes to aftermarket things. You can find a lot of information about just building something back to factory specs or whatever, but when it comes to adding aftermarket things, it gets a little confusing. It seems like there's only maybe a handful of people that really know what they're talking about, and I'm not one of them, but I'm trying to help wherever I can, so here it goes. Okay, so this is a 904 style torque converter. So it's the way that you can tell this is a 904 converter is the actual diameter of this is smaller. I believe it's, I want to say 10 or 11 inches. I had to check on that part, but you can also tell because the way that the body curves on the snout side or the like input shaft side this actually just goes in deeper. I think it's just to kind of like make up some volume here by concaving this more. But then the other obvious thing is, well, first of all, these pads will go on the inside holes for your flex plate. So I think the mounting holes are the same on the flex plate, whether you have the factory style or the SFI style like I have. But these go on the inside diameter bolt holes to the flex plate. And then these mounting pads or stands, whatever you want to call them, these are actually shorter on the 904 converters also. These are just over 1/4 of an inch thick. To the measurement from the tip or the end here to the body is just over 1/4 inch, or just under 0.3 inches. And then the bigger converters, or the V8 converters, are obviously a bigger diameter. They are supposedly, I believe they're the same height from the end of the mounting pad here to the end of the actual snout. If you measure it, should be 5.5 inches. But the other difference is they use the outside diameter on the flex plate, and then the mounting pads are almost 1/2 of an inch thick. So here's the issue with using the 904 style converter bodies though. What happens with the SFI converter, at least for a 401, this is specific actually for a 401 I guess, but the SFI flex plates have a bigger counterweight on it. So the counterweight on the factory flex plate is longer, like it actually goes like almost from mounting point to mounting point for the stands on the converter, but it's not that thick. So on the factory one it's shorter, the actual counterweight. On the SFI it's thicker but not quite as wide from bolt hole to bolt hole. So that's an issue when you're using the smaller converter style like this with the short stands, because the distance from the pad to here is only, you know, a little over a quarter inch, and then the counterweight on a flex plate is like 0.38 inches or something. So the counterweight will actually hit the body of the converter before the pads will actually hit the flex plate. At least that's what I'm thinking. That's actually one thing that I'm here to double check, because I do know that those thicknesses are an issue. I just don't know if it's out of the way of the diameter of this converter entirely or not. I have heard that people need to move the counterweight on the flex plate like closer to the outside of the flex plate in order to let you use the smaller diameter flex plate like this. So I'm gonna make some measurements right now though. This is kind of like my roundabout way of helping you and also explaining what I'm doing. But I am going to put this on here. I'm gonna put on the transmission, get it fully seated. This, like I said, this whole thing is more shallow now. So they basically just put this down so this is further away from the front of the transmission, which in theory should allow this to slide into the transmission more, the 1/8 of an inch that they changed it, and thusly move away from the flex plate to give me more clearance. The only problem though is I need enough clearance to shim the converter to clear that counterweight, possibly. So I have a couple things, those things to figure out before I know for a fact that this will fit. I think the only other solution would be to cut this down further to allow even more clearance, because it has to clear in there enough, and then I have to be able to shim it at least that like 1/10 of an inch or whatever to clear the counterweight possibly. But I might be able to avoid the whole thing if it doesn't actually contact the counterweight. That's probably really confusing, and I'm sorry if it is. Maybe rewind it and try to figure it out. I don't really know how better to explain it. I could draw like a graph or something. It's just really not that interesting. But if you are building an AMC, like probably a 390 or a 401, it is valuable information, and I've never actually seen anybody talk about it before. Maybe they just know and they haven't shared it on the internet, something like that, but I wanted to try to help wherever I could, so there we are. I'm gonna get to measuring stuff. Last night I came here and I gave you a very long explanation of what I was trying to do. Well, I tried to test fit some things and I got really frustrated, and I thought that everything wasn't going to fit the way that I was hoping it would. The converter fits in there just a little bit further than it used to, but really the big thing is I have to get around that counterweight on the flex plate. So I'm able to put the converter all the way in without rubbing against the front pump or anything like that, but I need to have not only enough clearance to basically pull out away from the front pump, but I need to have even more clearance so I can shim the mounting pads to the flex plate. I'm basically just trying to make those converter mounting pads thick enough that I can get around that counterweight without having the counterweight hit the body of the converter. That's all I'm trying to do. All right, we are back.
Guys, we're back.
Shut up, Randy.
The transmission
Shut
is
up,
supposed to
Posehead.
get put in after Dan went to...
Take off, you hoser. You take off, you numb.
Okay, so Randy and Ivan are here. Everything's a mess, just how I left it. Yep, you came from another country, aka Santan Valley. Randy is gonna help me basically just keep the engine still from the front on the crank bolt while he's gonna help me turn it actually. And then I'm gonna take the torque converter back off because I was trying to get it fit on there and mocked up, and well, didn't really work because counterweight's in a way which I expected. So gonna get that back off and then kind of start fresh from there. So hopefully you can make some actual progress today and get the transmission back on without too much problems. I hope everybody's crossing their finger right now. I am on my way back to Hughes, and I'm gonna pick up well, this would be the third iteration of the torque converter, so hopefully this one is all good. I'm basically looking for the correct measurement from the mounting pad or stand, whatever you want to call it, to the end of the snout. It should be, according to the measurements that I found, right around 5.375 inches or something like that. The one that I did have, the best measurement that I got was 5.5, which is actually over the high end of what it's supposed to be. And I did make note with them that it needs to be a little bit shorter if possible. So I hope that they got it all fixed this time. I'm just really crossing my fingers on it, man. This is the third time, and Hughes has been really cool about it. Steve at Hughes, he helped me out a lot, so I really got to give a shout out to Steve. So thanks, Steve. Also, while I was waiting on all this stuff, I may have shown something on this already, or I can't remember if I did or not. But I went ahead and I started taking the front springs out of the front of the car again. As you probably saw in the earlier episodes, the front end of the car sat up really high, like abnormally high. It's like probably about 6 inches of space between like the top of the tire and the middle part of the fender lip. So way too high. And I already did one side of it, but I'm gonna show my process on how to get the spring out with this tool that I bought off of eBay a while back. It makes things so much easier. It's really valuable information, and as far as I can tell, nobody really shows how to do it on YouTube. So I'll be the one to help you out on that. And the best part about it is the front suspension, the way that it is on the Javelin, is similar to pretty much everything from the same era. The Hornet, Gremlin, Ambassador, like pretty much all, like everything. Matador, yeah. So it is helpful information. Anyways, I'm getting close to Hughes, so I'm gonna stop recording here, but I'm gonna get back to the shop and I'll kind of show some more of what I was talking about. I just wanted to say really quick, now that I'm back here at the shop, I'm really sorry if this whole torque converter thing is really taking up a lot of the video. For the purpose of entertainment value, I'm trying to keep it as short and as concise as possible, but there really is just a lot to this, as I'm finding out. But let me, I'm gonna open up this box here. This is a new converter. Okay, I've got so many stickers and so many instructions now. I could cover a whole wall with Hughes converter stickers. Okay. So essentially what they said, just to recap here, in case I need to, they're keeping this whole top section of the converter the same. So this whole plate up here with the curve in it and everything is the same. Looks like they might have scuffed it somewhere. But the thing that's different, you'll see, is the mounting pads, or stands as I was calling them. These are deeper than the ones before. So hopefully, with any luck here, I believe that this is like a drain plug, and I believe that this goes on the opposite side of the counterweight, or at least I really hope so. So, yeah, this is like a really old school case apparently, and it's probably one of the last ones they had around, sounds like. So I think I'm pretty lucky on that. I got all the measurements. It should clear the counterweight now. I'm still gonna have to use 2 block spacers is what I'm finding. And it's not awesome. I was hoping they were gonna take some more length out of like the whole dimension I was talking about, but it looks exactly the same as before. So maybe they weren't able to, they didn't really explain anything. I think they're just kind of tired of seeing me, honestly. But it should work. I'm just gonna have to use the 2 block spacers like I had it before in order to get that proper amount of clearance. Without it, it would be, something like 0.08 inches clearance, and you need at least 0.125. With the second block spacer, it'll be 1.56 thereabouts. So it should be just within range. It's just I'm gonna have to use that second block spacer, but at least this one should work. I measured the distance from the bell housing to the mounting pad, and that all looks good, so we should be in business. Now, the other thing that I was talking about was the shocks, or springs. So what I'm having to do here, if you just take a look, you can see the shock on the inside of the spring. The tool that you can buy, it's specific to like a lot of Fords and AMC, pretty much just ripped off their design, but you put a tool that's the shape of the shock in the middle. It basically just bolts down here at the perch here in the bottom where the shock usually does, and then same thing on the top. It just anchors on the shock mount, or shock tower, and it compresses the entire spring. So you gotta also loosen up these two bolts here on the side for the perch, and that way it'll kind of like move away from it. It'll allow the spring to compress. So that all sounds nice and easy, but the upper control arm is an issue because once you get it like compressed and everything, you can't really do anything else with it, or at least it seems that way. So I was running into the problem where I would try to decompress it and there really wasn't anywhere to go except for right into the control arm, which was not letting me get everything loose the way that I wanted to. With a little bit of figuring and supposing, I went on to Facebook and everything, and thankfully there's been some guys on there that have done this before, obviously, and they have the same tool. I'm gonna show that to you also really quick. So this is the tool that I'm talking about. This nut here is the part that goes on top of the shock tower, and then it goes through the spring and connects down at the bottom there. And the thing is with this design is the factory used something similar to this, but it had like a ball at the top where this would be able to pivot. So when it's connected down here and it's lifting up the spring perch, you could pivot it out away from the upper control arm and get it out. Now with this one, there's really not a lot of give, so you just got to be kind of, you have to finesse it. Let's just put it that way. You have to get it compressed up to where you want it. I'd say about 4 or 5 inches or so. And then how I did it was I got a pry bar on there and pried it up against like the upper control arm a little bit, and like to the point where when I start decompressing it, it would start coming out away from the upper control arm, and it came out okay. And I think it could be possible for the spring to get loose on the top, but it doesn't really have anywhere to go except for the fender. So I mean, worst case scenario, it's probably going to do some damage to your fender, like if it popped loose or something, which I just don't really think that that's going to happen, because it's still in here. It's just kind of at a weird angle when you start pulling at it, but you're easing off the pressure a little bit, and I mean it did just fine for me. It didn't damage the shock tower mount or anything weird like that, and I was able to get it out. So what I did for the other spring, if you look on Eaton Springs, they have like a calculation, and it's actually really simple. It's basically just like, how much do you want to drop your front end? Do you want to drop it 4 inches? Then you either take 2 inches out of the spring, and that's not like 2 inches of the actual coil, but 2 inches of actual height. So you go from like the top of your spring, measure down 2 inches and see where that's at on the coil, and then that's where you would cut it. So that's what I did with mine. I dropped it actually, or cut 2 1/8 inch out of it, so that would drop it 4 1/4 inches supposedly. So I already did the driver's side. I got that all back together, and tonight I'm hopefully gonna come back and do the other side, and then maybe this weekend we can get to the transmission again. But I'm really curious to see whether this lowers it the way that I'm thinking. I already got the transmission pulled back out from under there, so I think when and if I get this done today or tomorrow or whatever, I'm gonna drop it down and actually see how it looks. just to reiterate, this spring was from Rock Auto. It's like some Swedish company or whatever, and it fits. Everything fits the way that it's supposed to, but it's like, I don't know what the spring originally was for, or like where they got the dimensions for it and all that stuff, but it sits a little high. It basically sat on the ground like it does up in the air right now. It's like 6 inches or more between the tire and the fender. And I know these cars sit a little high from the factory, so I get that, and I'm not trying to slam the car down or anything stupid either. I just want to make it look a little closer to normal, maybe a little bit lower, but nothing too wild, you know? I got these huge honking headers to be concerned about, so I don't want to go too low. But anyways, that's the goal. I'll show you a little bit of what I was talking about, or I'll try to, with like the prying thing, and then we'll get this thing on the ground. Take a look at it. This is what it looks like when the tool is through the shock tower. It just has a washer, like a really nice heavy duty thick washer, and then a nut threads down. And then it comes down here, and like I said, it attaches just like the shock. So it's going through the spring perch right now. Basically what you're doing is you're just tightening it using this thread, and it pushes against this as like one anchor point, and then doing that pulls this spring perch up towards the top. So it squeezes this, but in order for that to happen properly, you do have to undo the bolts on the spring perch. These from the factory, I believe, are knurled, or yeah, I believe they're just knurled, and they go through and then they have a nut on the bottom. So we had to do what we had to do on these, and so these are grade 8 replacements, and we just have like a lock nut on the other side. So hopefully that'll be good. But later on, when I come back, I'll undo these spring perch bolts, and that'll let me compress this. Another tip too is get your floor jack underneath the lower control arm there, where it's nice and safe to put it, and jack it up until the weight starts coming off the car a little bit. That'll compress the spring a little bit already, and it'll save you a lot of time with doing this part, because once you get this tight, you got to sit here with like either a big wrench or an adjustable wrench and just keep yarding on this thing until it actually compresses the spring enough. And it just saves you like 20 minutes if you just jack up the spring and like kind of pre-compress it. I'm gonna do a quick outfit change and see you back in about 5 hours. And I'm back. Just getting ready to get everything out. I got everything in there from earlier, so I'm just gonna pop this spring out and cut it down. Right now, I have this tightened just a little bit to take some pressure off the spring perch down there, but I have the bolts off of the bottom of the spring perch now, and I'm really gonna start tightening this, and it's just gonna pull the spring up away from the upper control arm. And once I get it up about 4 or 5 inches, like I said earlier, then I can get the pry bar and start getting ready to basically just undo this nut and decompress the spring. But when I do, it'll be out of the way of the upper control arm. All right, now I'm at the point where you can see the spring perch is separating from the control arm here. If you remember, I said jack up the lower control arm here so it pushes up. Oh, here's where this washer went. I was looking for that. But you push this up, and then you start compressing that, and it's like I said, it gives you a good boost, basically. It's a little cheat, so when you let this down, it'll give you some extra space, like so. I would say it's about 2 or 3 inches, so I'll probably compress it just a little bit more to give me a little bit more space. But I'll show you what you got to do with the pry bar here in a second. This is the pry bar thing that I was talking about. You want to grab a nice long pry bar for good leverage, and you kind of just use the upper control arm, and you can get behind the spring perch like I have it right here. You can kind of see it hooked underneath. And what you're gonna do is basically push this with your foot to kind of like push it outwards a little bit towards the outside of the car, and it also kind of pushes down the upper control arm at the same time. So when you're doing that with your foot, you're up here loosening the tool to decompress the spring. So as you undo the pressure, it'll start to let it down in the direction you actually want it, and it'll clear this upper control arm, preventing you from having to take the entire upper control arm off and all that crap. So this worked out just fine on the other side, hoping that it does the same on this side. As you can see, got my foot on the bar. You can kind of use your floor jack as a little footrest. That's kind of nice. Just prying it back, making progress. Almost off. Okay. That was about, I'd say 30, 40 minutes from taking the tire off to getting the spring out. So not too bad. I'm gonna do what I did on the other side, and I'm gonna put it in my bench vise and kind of just hold it still so I can cut off a link. Just one more thing that you're gonna want to take note of on these springs. You're gonna want to cut on the bottom side. I'm not entirely sure if these are what you would consider boxed in or not. They are flattened a little bit, but I'm not entirely sure if that's because of the manufacturing process with these, or if it's just flattened from being in the actual perch. But at any rate, I don't think that this is enough angle here to worry about, I think. And then these, you definitely don't want to cut it on this side because it comes in small and fits inside the isolator on the top underneath the fender. So definitely don't cut that side. I'm not gonna get super in depth with this, but basically you just need to check from the top here or wherever you want to do it really, but it needs to be 2 1/8, I think it was. Yeah, 2 1/8, which is perfect. So these are exactly the same on each side. So it's just one coil to get me that 4 1/4 drop. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut these. I'm not gonna bore you with the rest of the details, but I'm gonna throw these back in the same way that I took them out. And then I think I'm gonna try to get the jacks out from underneath here and then drop it down and see if there's any noticeable difference. I really hope there is, but let's find out. That's that. Messy shop cam. Take one. I have the back end ready to go down, and then I'm just gonna remove the front jacks, and then the whole car will be back underground, and maybe we'll get an idea on where it's sitting. Okay, this is going down. Rolling. Well, it's definitely lower. That's good. With all this transmission stuff, haven't really had the car back on the ground for a while, but it looks like it's got the stance thing going on. I definitely know that it's going to settle to some extent. I did coilovers on my Challenger, my 2010 Challenger that I had, and it dropped like somewhere between like 1/2 inch and 1 inch maybe. As you can see, there's still some gap, but it looks like closer to what factory would be. If it dropped another inch, it would not break my heart. I definitely don't have a ton of clearance. Let's see. Those headers are mighty close to the ground. They don't hug the, well, they don't hug the bottom of the car very well. But I knew that that was going to be something before I even did this. I knew that was going to be something to think about. But, you know, this car is not exactly about practicality. It's just about being a badass road warrior looking car. And that's really what it's starting to look like what it's going to be. I'm really happy that that dropped it down as much as it did. And I'm glad that I didn't go any more than that, because I think once it settles, it's going to be perfect. I'm just going to leave it alone. Oh. Dudes, I've been sick for like 2 weeks. I got the cold or the flu or something, and then I got ye old coronavirus. So that sucked. Transmission is still sitting here. We were not able to get that in, but I believe it's the correct converter now. It has the taller stands. Everything should be good on that. There's a few different vacuum lines, like from the distributor to the carburetor, the brake booster, PCV valve I got figured out. I did put some power steering fluid in a power steering reservoir. It seems like a lot of it is on the floor right now, so I'm sure that's perfectly fine. That's most of the big stuff. So what I'm working on now, I have some pre-bent transmission cooler lines, and eventually I would like to just get it ran to an auxiliary cooler, but for the sake of how much time I actually have right now to get everything done, I'm just gonna put it to the radiator like it should be, at least factory style. So I need to try to figure out whether those are actually going to reach properly or not. And I can't do that perfectly without the transmission in, but I also have some fittings I'm gonna make sure actually fit in the transmission and the radiator. So I'm gonna do that. There's some suspension things that I need to do also, which is like kind of making sure that everything's sort of in place and sort of tightened down. I know the alignment's gonna be all jacked up on this thing, but really I just need it to go down the road somewhat straight, and I can do the alignment thing afterwards. I'm just trying to get things buttoned up here to where it can be somewhat safely driven on the road. I don't know what's going on with the power steering. I don't know. I had the cap off and I was kind of just turning the wheel from left to right, trying to get bubbles and whatever out of there. So I don't know if it kind of just bubbled over somewhere or if there's a seal maybe on a steering box. I really hope it's not, because that means I'd have to remove it and rebuild seals in it and all that stuff, which I'll probably have to do. But if I can at least get it to the point where it's not just like leaking all over the damn place, that'd be pretty cool. Or, you know, getting power steering fluid on the headers or something. That doesn't seem like that would be a good thing. Anyways, I'm gonna get started on some of this transmission stuff and see what kind of progress I can make. I did a couple little things here. I'm trying to clear off some table space. That's become like my spare parts table. I have some transmission stuff on that table. That one I still need to organize a little bit. Working on clearing off this table. I still have stuff everywhere, but it's kind of like organized chaos right now. I charged a battery a little bit. It should be good now. It was good already, but I just want to make sure it's tip top. Just one less thing to worry about. Also, there was a huge ordeal trying to figure out the trans cooler lines on the bottom of this radiator. This is a Alloy Works radiator. I'm not sure if it's its own deal or if this is basically just a knockoff of Champion radiators. But there's the ports on the bottom for the cooling to go to the transmission. They're tiny and they're not NPT. I believe these are like 3/8 SAE fittings going onto this. And the actual line is, I don't even know. I can't remember. I forgot to check that. But these are the pre-bent lines that I have. Long story short, I am not going to be using the cooling in the radiator for the transmission. I'm going to put my auxiliary cooler that I have over here somewhere, and I'm just going to run rubber lines to my pre-bent lines here. I'm probably going to end up cutting them like right here, so they'll basically go up to the front by the radiator, and then I'm just going to have rubber lines go up, or I should say under the radiator support and into the cooler. That took me like a day and a half to figure out what to do with all that crap, because I had to find new fittings for the transmission, which I didn't know right offhand what size that was or anything. So that was a thing. COVID pretty much put a damper on a lot of things, and finally, hopefully going to be getting back on track here in a few days on Sunday. I got the converter in there. It's all ready to go, so we'll just throw this back up in there, get the starter on, get the cooling lines on, shifter cable, all that crap, and hopefully we can get this thing started. I'm crossing my fingers. I'm pretty close on a lot of things here. We just got to get over here and just start doing stuff. It is Sunday, almost noon. Pizza's on the way. Ivan's on his way. We're going to try to make some progress today, like some real progress. We know that the transmission has been sitting here. I got a lot of the cooling line stuff figured out. We're just basically going to throw that thing in there. Hopefully we can get the flex plate bolted to the converter, have the clearances we need, all that crap, blah, blah, blah. But as soon as that goes in, we can really start plugging away. Get the starter connected to the transmission, get it wired up. Hopefully all that will be good. Really, there's not a lot left to do before we can actually get the car itself started. So that's my ultimate goal today, is to try to get the car started. So this could be big. I'm really hoping that everything goes at least somewhat to plan, at least enough to plan that we can get this thing going. But we're about to find out. All right, so Ivan and I got started on getting the transmission in there. We got it bolted up to the engine pretty quickly. Between Randy, myself, and Ivan, we've done this like 7 times now, so we're pretty much professionals. Everything's here. I checked the clearance with the converter to the flex plate, and it's 0.175, which is perfect. If I took one block plate out, it would not be enough clearance. So it's right where it needs to be. I do wish that Hughes would have made the converter just a little shorter, like the length that it's supposed to be. But that made it a little more difficult and required me to use the second block plate. But now we have that on there. We're trying to get the flex plate bolts to the actual converter to fasten it, and it's kind of being a little bit of a pain in the ass. But
Son of a bitch, get the fuck in there.
Captain's log, day 9,647. Well, we had more problems, you could probably guess by the somber tone of my voice. Things are not working out super great. I think I mentioned before, but I need to be out of the shop pretty soon, so it's coming down to the wire, trying to get this car running to get it back home. I don't think that's gonna happen. Ivan has already gone home. This is the day after, and I'll show you what I'm dealing with here. The transmission is back out of the car once again. The converter and everything is good, so I do know that we're good on that. Everything that I said about the torque converter holds true. So with the 2 block plates and the 5.5 inch dimension that Hughes has given me with this converter, I have 0.175 inches clearance, which is perfect. If I took away 1 block plate, I would not have enough clearance. So I'm right within the specs for that. We're all good there. We actually did get the car wired up shortly. We did have it wired up to the starter and everything. We have good starter engagement. The engine actually turns over. I unplugged the coil when we did it so it wouldn't fire. You know, not having any transmission fluid in there would not be a good idea. So I do know that it all works though. I did have the drive shaft connected. That's when I realized that the transmission is just, it's like locked up. There's something happening mechanically inside of the transmission that is keeping it from spinning. Regardless of what gear you have it in, it does not want to turn. So I was actually putting the drive shaft in and trying to turn the drive shaft to get the U-bolts in on the back, and I couldn't spin it to do that. And that's when I realized we had a big issue. So we took the tail section off to see if it was a parking sprag. It's not that. Tried loosening some of the bands and stuff. It's not that. The converter was free and spinning, so it's not that. It doesn't have anything to do with fluid because we didn't actually get to the point where it was running or anything, so we're pretty confident it's not fluid or pressure related. So it really only leaves like something mechanically hanging it up, like in the planetaries or something going on there. So obviously that means that the car is not going to be running very soon. I did just get the transmission out by myself though, and Ivan's gonna come by sometime this week, and he's gonna pick up the transmission, and he's gonna kind of just do another look over the whole thing and see if he can figure out what's going on with it. I do have a nice book that kind of helps with troubleshooting and that type of thing, so hopefully that will help get it solved. But it really does, I mean, it does come down to the transmission once again, so I'm pretty bummed out about it. But you know what, I'm not even gonna bore you guys with any of the other details. We're just gonna get this right. I'm gonna get it back in, and hopefully the next thing you see here is gonna be us trying to get this thing started. So we couldn't finish what we were doing last time because the transmission was basically stuck. I went to put the drive shaft on it and turn it, and it didn't turn at all, no matter what gear you were in, it's just stuck. So we later found out that the rear servo was jamming up somehow. They get worn out, I guess, over time. There's like a piston that fits in there, and it can get in there cockeyed and stuff. So I bought a really nice billet aftermarket one that some guy just makes and sells on eBay. It was kind of expensive, but it's billet, so I don't think it's gonna fail anytime soon, which is nice. So Ivan was able to put that back into the transmission. We got that all sorted out, put it back in, made sure everything still moves, set the bands again, all that good stuff. So he's on the way here now with that, and we're gonna give it like the 7th attempt or whatever to put the transmission in. But this time we already know that torque converter fits, we already know clearances are good. Pretty much everything should be good. The starter we already verified. So at this point, it's literally just getting everything back in there, hopefully verifying that everything moves with the transmission, and then just starting the thing up. So I'm really hoping we can make it happen this time. Just a friendly reminder, I have these shirts with the Javelin on it for sale on fasterandlouder.com. There's a store on the website, it's on there. It's the only product that I have right now. But I just want a reminder, every purchase really does help me out. I'm like a stay-at-home dad right now, so any little bit of income I can get to help the project move forward is greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Ivan's here. We are here doing stuff. We got the transmission bolted up again, and we have verified that it actually does spin now, the transmission. So drive shaft is connected. Now we're connecting a lot of the things from the transmission to the other components that need to be connected, like the trans cooler and shift linkage and kick down and all that stuff. And then we can get fluid in there and hopefully get it started up.
Yep.
So we'll see. Okay, so we have everything connected. I'm really excited and really scared, but we think that we got everything connected, so we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna just try starting it, at least for a little bit. We only put like 4 or 5 quarts of transmission fluid in, so
Plus whatever was in the converter.
yeah, so there's like maybe 5 or 6 quarts in it. So we're gonna start it, let it run, hopefully for a few seconds, just turn it off, see if there's any obvious leaks, and then just add more transmission fluid. And
Because the power steering is going to blow itself up.
yeah, yeah, that's not looking too good.
Cooler lights on. Transmission's bolted up. Torque converter bolted up.
Like torque the bell housing bolts, right?
Hmm?
Did you torque the bell housing bolts?
Yeah, they're tight.
Your elbow popped to let you know that it torques back.
Yes, sir. 100 foot-pounds.
I had the fan wired up properly, I think.
And nothing's in the way.
All the cooling lines should be tied in or capped.
Right. Distributors plugged back in.
PCD hose is
Yep.
hooked up. Power brakes hose is connected.
Okay.
Fuel lines should be good, hopefully.
Do we have fuel? No.
Yeah, well it's probably not primed.
Not anymore. You have an oil pressure gauge?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything? Fuel? The pedal feels really soft. I'm not sure if it's connected, right? I think it is. Does it work when I hit it?
Yeah, you were moving it,
Okay.
but there's nothing in there yet.
It might take a minute, I don't know. I'll check under the car again.
Do you have fuel?
Yeah.
I mean,
That's like 3 or 4 gallons. Oh, I actually have gas. If you want to like put it in a cup or something, I'm like.
nah, I like this better.
Well, it should be primed now, at least. The oil.
it in the float bowl.
Man, I want my Corvette sound like that.
Well, we gotta put an AMC engine in it then.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I can't believe it's finally.
Surprised you're able to lean against the fender.
One time you could.
Well, it's running, so that was fun to see and hear. There's a couple small issues that we got off camera. So the power steering pump basically just seized up. It ran out of fluid, I believe, because it's been dripping so much. There's just nothing in there, and it just, the whole thing locked up. And then it burned up the belt also. So it started smoking, and I just ran over there and shut it off really quick. But now I need to get this out. It should be under warranty, I'm thinking, so I'll just bring it over to O'Reilly's and see if they'll swap it out and give me a new one. But we just took it all off. We're gonna try to get the initial timing set, and I'm gonna test out the transmission, see if everything's working okay on that front. And then, yeah, so my next job will be getting the power steering out and replacing that seal. Well, that's pretty much it. The car is running. I did mention trying to check the transmission to make sure that it works, and it appears that it does. I had to put it in neutral and kind of like let the pump fill up or let the converter fill up, whatever it had to do. But put it in neutral for a little bit, check the forward and reverse gears. It appears we're good. I still think that I have maybe a little bit of fluid to put in it, but I gotta wait until I can get the transmission hot, which means I need to get the overflow container and whatever. I got a few things that I still have to do. It's running though, and that's what's important. It's been a really long time. It's been a long road just to get it running. And I know that I said that this was gonna be the last part of the road to roadworthiness, and it's not really roadworthy yet. So there is going to be a lot more videos, probably just getting all those little things taken care of. And I'm standing here by my new shed here. I just put down like a fresh coat of protective stuff here on the floor. And I'm gonna be moving all my stuff over here. It's not big enough for the car to fit in here, obviously. It's gonna fit all my work stuff in here, my tools and all that good stuff. And then I'm probably going to put some sort of like cheap carport kind of thing here so I can actually keep the car protected. But that'll be future episodes, I'm sure, some future videos. But thank you guys for watching so much. I know this is like a super long video. You probably have to cut this into a few pieces so you can make it all the way through, but I appreciate you guys following along. There's gonna be a ton of videos in the future, future projects on the car, hopefully some cool drives like destination videos. I've been wanting to do that stuff forever. I just I've never gotten around to it, or I didn't have a car to actually drive for those kinds of videos. But we'll get to that, so thanks for watching, guys. Later.